On the border world called Kael'thar 5, the fierce alien queen named Vyrathra ruled her people with strong claws and bright plasma weapons. She was the leader of the Xari Dominion, a race of tall-scaled warriors with sharp teeth and glowing eyes. Her 3 daughters were her greatest pride. The oldest daughter was Princess Syra. She stood almost as tall as her mother and always spoke with bold words. The middle daughter was Princess Lyrith. She had clever eyes and liked to watch everything around her. The youngest was Princess Nissa. She was small and still had soft new scales from her first molt. All 3 princesses carried the future of their royal line inside them. The war with humans had lasted many years. Both sides fought hard across many stars. The Xari ships burned bright in the black sky, while human fleets answered with cold metal strength. At last, a shaky peace came. Both sides agreed to stop shooting for a while. To make sure nobody broke the deal, the humans sent one man to stay at the Queen's palace. He was called Lieutenant Elias Crow. He came alone, with no weapons, and only a small bag of clothes. People called him a goodwill hostage. He would live among the Xari to show trust. Elias was not big or loud. He had quiet brown eyes and short dark hair. His skin looked soft compared to the hard scales of his hosts. He walked carefully through the huge stone halls of the palace. He spoke politely to guards and servants, even when they growled at him. Many Xari hated humans. They remembered cities turned to ash by human bombs. Elias knew this, so he kept his head down and his voice low. The palace sat on a high mountain. Its walls were black stone, mixed with shining metal. Towers rose like claws into the red sky. Inside, everything smelled of hot iron and sweet burning herbs. The queen's throne room was wide and dark. A huge window showed the stars and the orbiting warships. At night, lights from the city below glowed like fallen embers. Held a big festival to celebrate the new peace. Music filled the air with deep drums and high flutes. Servants carried trays of spiced meat and glowing drinks. The 3 princesses wore bright silk robes with gold threads. They laughed and chased each other through the crowded halls. Syra led the way with long steps. Lyrith followed close behind, always looking around. Nissa ran after them on short legs, her tail wagging with joy. Guards stood at every door. Their eyes never stopped moving. They carried long spears that hummed with energy. Nobody noticed when the princesses slipped away from the main hall. They ran down a side passage, giggling as they went. The youngest, Nissa, pointed at a small glowing bug that flew past. It had wings like tiny flames and left a trail of soft light. The princesses loved such things. They forgot about the festival and followed the bug deeper into the palace. The bug flew low through dark corridors. It led them past old storage rooms and forgotten stairs. Princesses ran faster. Syra reached out to catch it, but missed. Lyrith laughed and said it was too quick. Nissa clapped her small claws together. She wanted to hold the pretty light. They did not notice how far they had gone from the bright halls. The sounds of music faded behind them. Up in the throne room, Queen Vyrathra sat tall on her seat. She watched the dancers and listened to reports from her commanders. Her tail moved slowly across the stone floor. She felt calm for the first time in years. The peace seemed real. She even allowed herself a small smile when a servant brought her favorite drink. Then a guard ran in. His scales were pale with fear. He dropped to one knee and spoke fast. The 3 princesses are missing. Their chambers are empty. The queen stood up so quickly, her throne rocked back. Servants froze. Music stopped. Guards drew their weapons. The queen roared loud enough to crack glass along the walls. Her eyes burned red with sudden rage. Search parties formed in seconds. Elite warriors in black armor spread through every level of the palace. They checked rooms, closets, vents, and hidden passages. Nobody found any sign of the girls. No blood, no broken doors, no messages. The queen paced the throne room. Her claws clicked hard against the floor. She called for more guards, more lights, more everything. Someone pointed at the human, Elias Crow. He had been seen near the royal wing earlier that evening. He carried no weapons, but he was the only outsider allowed so close. The queen turned her head slowly toward him, her lips pulled back to show every sharp tooth. Guards grabbed Elias by the arms. They dragged him forward and forced him to his knees. Heavy chains snapped around his wrists. They glowed with no gravity fields, so he could not move fast. Virathra stepped close. She leaned down until her snout almost touched his face. Her breath was hot and smelled of smoke. "Tell me where my daughters are," she said in a low hiss, "or I will pull your soft skin off piece by piece." Peace. Elias looked up at her. He did not shake or beg. He spoke in a calm voice. "I saw them run toward the lower gardens. They chased a glowing bug. I told a guard, but he did not listen." The queen laughed. It was a cruel sound. She did not believe him. Humans always lied. She pressed a sharp vibro blade against his throat. The blade hummed softly, ready to cut. Elias felt the edge touch his skin, but he kept his eyes steady. He said nothing more. Scouts came back from the gardens. They found nothing. No footprints, no scales, no sign the princesses had left the palace grounds. The queen snarled louder. Now she felt fear mixed with anger. Her daughters were gone, and nobody knew where. The court whispered about curses or secret enemies. The queen ordered every corner searched again. She kept Elias alive only because he might know something useful. She locked him in a small cell, with guards at the door. Night passed slowly. The palace lights dimmed, but nobody slept. Ready. Servants cleaned floors with nervous hands. The queen stood alone on a balcony. She looked out at the dark planet below. Her claws gripped the railing so hard, stone dust fell away. She whispered names of her daughters into the wind. "Sira, Lyrith, Nissa, come back to me." In the lower levels far below the bright halls, Elias sat in his cell. He rubbed his sore wrists and thought about the princesses. He remembered how small Nissa looked when she ran after the bug. He remembered how Sira always tried to act brave, and how Lyrith watched him with curious eyes. He hoped they were safe. He hoped someone would find them soon. The search went on through the dark hours. Nobody rested. The queen would not allow it. She walked the halls herself, looking into every shadow. Her heart beat hard with worry. She was a fierce queen, but she was also a mother. Now her strength felt empty without her daughters near. Far below, in forgotten tunnels, something stirred. 3 small shapes moved quietly. Were tired and cold. They had followed the glowing bug too far. Now they needed a safe place to rest. They looked for warmth and quiet. They found a hidden spot near old human machines, and there they waited for morning to come. The palace stayed awake, searching and hoping. Nobody knew yet where the fierce alien queen's daughters had gone. Nobody knew they were closer than anyone thought. Queen Virathra stood on the highest balcony of her palace and looked out over the dark planet. Her claws gripped the stone rail so tight that small pieces broke off and fell into the night below. She had not slept since her daughters vanished. Her eyes stayed wide open and red with anger and fear. The palace lights burned bright, but they could not chase away the cold feeling in her chest. She turned back inside and walked fast through the long halls. Guards followed close behind them. Their armor made soft clinking sounds with every step. She called all her best commanders to the war room. They stood in a circle around a big glowing table that showed maps of the whole planet and the ships in orbit. One commander spoke first. "We have searched every garden, every tower, every market in the city below. Nothing." The queen slammed her fist on the table. The glow flickered for a moment. She said, "Then search harder. Send the hunter swarms. Send every warrior we have. Come home." The hunter swarms lifted off from hidden caves. They were small flying machines with sharp sensors and bright searchlights. They flew low over forests, mountains, and ruined old battlefields. They stand for heat, for movement, for any sign of the three princesses. The queen watched the feeds on big screens in her throne room. The pictures showed empty fields, dark trees, and quiet rivers. Nothing moved except wind and small animals. She growled low in her throat. She kept Lieutenant Elias Crow alive. The human stayed locked in a small stone room deep under the palace. 2 guards stood outside the door at all times. They gave him water and plain food, but nothing more. Elias sat on the hard floor with his back against the wall. His wrists still hurt from the heavy chains he wore earlier. He thought about the princesses. He remembered how Nissa always smiled when she saw something new. He remembered how Sira tried to look tough even when she was scared. Place to hide. The queen came to see him on the second day. She walked into the cell alone. The guards stayed outside. She stood tall over him and looked down. Her tail moved slowly behind her. She spoke in a quiet voice that still carried danger. "Tell me again what you saw." Elias looked up at her. He spoke slow and clear. "I saw them chase a glowing bug. It flew toward the lower levels. I told one of your guards." He laughed and said, "Princesses do not play in dirty places." I wanted to follow them, but another guard stopped me and said, "Humans stay in their place." Virathra stared at him for a long time. Her claws opened and closed. She said, "You lie like all humans do." Elias shook his head. "No, I do not lie. I want your daughters safe too. They are children. They should not be alone in a big palace during a war." The queen turned away. She did not answer. She walked out, and the door closed behind her with a loud clang. Days passed. The search grew bigger. The queen sent teams to check old mines under the mountains. She sent scouts to neighboring cities. She even asked allied clans for help. Word spread fast across the Dominion. Everyone talked about the missing princesses. Some said rebels took them. Some said humans planned it all. Some whispered that the girls ran away because they feared the war coming back. The queen heard every rumor. She punished anyone who spoke too loud without proof. Elias stayed in his cell. He exercised by walking in small circles. He did push-ups against the wall to keep strong. He talked to the guards sometimes. They did not answer much, but one young guard named Kor sometimes listened. Kor had a sister the same age as Nissa. He felt sorry for the human, even though he was supposed to hate him. One night Kor brought extra bread and slipped it through the bars. Elias thanked him quietly. On the 4th day the queen grew tired of waiting. She ordered Elias brought to the throne room. Guards pulled him out of the cell. They put new chains on him, lighter ones, still strong. They marched him up many stairs and through wide halls. People stared as he passed. Some hissed, some showed their teeth. Elias kept his head up and his steps steady. The throne room was full of nobles and warriors. They stood silent when the queen entered. She sat on her high seat and looked at Elias. She said, "You will join the search. You will walk with my teams. You will show us every place you think they might go. If you try to run, my warriors will kill you." Elias nodded. "I understand. I will help find them." They took him to the lower levels first. The palace had many old parts built long ago when humans controlled this world. The walls were smooth metal instead of stone. Lights along the floor glowed weak and yellow. Elias walked ahead of the guards. He pointed to small doors and narrow passages. He said, "These were service tunnels. They lead to heating systems and water pipes. The princesses might have gone inside to hide." The guards laughed. They said little girls do not crawl. Through dirty holes, Elias said, "These girls do. They like adventures." They searched for hours. They opened panels. They looked behind machines. They found dust and broken wires, but no princesses. The queen came down herself. She wore light armor and carried a short plasma blade. She watched Elias closely. She wanted to see if he lied with his body or his face. Elias moved careful. He checked corners. He listened for sounds. He did not act nervous or guilty. At the end of the day, they found nothing. The queen felt anger rise again. She grabbed Elias by the front of his shirt and pulled him close. Her snout almost touched his nose. She said, "You waste my time, human." Elias looked straight into her eyes. He said, "I am not wasting time. I am trying. I know they are still in the palace. I can feel it." The queen let him go. She turned away and walked back up the stairs. The guards took Elias to his cell again. That night Elias lay on the thin mat and stared at the ceiling. Bug. He remembered how fast it flew. He wondered if it led the princesses somewhere special. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep, but worry kept him awake. Outside the palace, the hunter swarms kept flying. They scanned every shadow. They sent signals back to the command center. All reports said the same thing. No trace, no sign. The queen sat alone in her private rooms. She looked at pictures of her daughters on the wall. Syra stood proud with her first training spear. Lyrith smiled clever and quiet. Nissa hugged a soft toy animal. The queen touched the pictures with one claw. She whispered their names again and again. On the 6th day, Elias asked to speak to the queen again. The guards took him to her. She stood by a big window, looking at the stars. She did not turn around when he entered. Elias said, "There are old human tunnels under the lowest levels. They connect to forgotten storage rooms. The princesses might have gone there to chase the bug." The queen finally looked at him. She said, "Those tunnels are sealed long ago," Elias said. "Not all of them. Some doors still open if you know where to push." The queen thought for a moment. She said, "Fine, show me. If you lie this time, you die tonight." They gathered a small team. The queen led them herself. Elias walked in front, with 2 guards close behind. They went down many stairs. They passed dark halls and quiet machines. The air grew cold and smelled of old metal and dust. Elias pointed to a wall panel. It looked like part of a stone, but he pressed a hidden spot. The panel slid open with a low groan. Inside was a narrow tunnel with weak lights along the floor. The team moved inside single file. Elias led the way. He walked slow and careful. He listened to every sound. The queen followed close, her plasma blade ready. The tunnel twisted and turned. It went deeper under the palace. They passed old crates covered in dust. They passed broken pipes that dripped water. The guards grumbled about the dirt, but nobody stopped. After a long walk, Elias heard something faint. It sounded like soft breathing mixed with small purrs. He held up his hand to stop the team. He whispered, "Wait, I hear them." The queen pushed forward. Her eyes grew wide. She listened too. The sound came from around the next corner. Elias moved ahead slow. The others followed quiet. They turned the corner and stopped. The sight in front of them made everyone freeze. In a small alcove lined with old blankets and soft padding, 3 small shapes slept close together. They were curled up tight and peaceful. The queen felt her heart stop for a moment. Then it beat hard and fast. She stepped forward, one slow step at a time. Her daughters were alive. They were safe. They were here, all along. The narrow tunnel opened into a small hidden alcove. The weak yellow lights along the floor cast soft shadows across old blankets and scattered crates. 3 small figures lay curled together on a flat emergency cot that once belonged to human workers. The cot looked worn but clean. Someone had spread extra insulation padding over it to make a warm nest. Princess Sira, the tallest of the 3, rested across the center of the cot. Her long, scaled body stretched out, with one strong arm draped over the human man's chest, like a protective shield. Her head lay near his shoulder. Her tail curled loosely around his leg. She breathed slow and deep. Her usual fierce frown was gone. In sleep, she looked almost gentle. Next to her, Princess Lyrith pressed close against the human's right side. Her clever eyes were closed tight. Her snout rested on his ribs. Her tail wrapped twice around his waist, as if to hold him in place. She made tiny, quiet clicks in her throat, the sound Kasari young sometimes made when they felt safe and calm. Little Princess Nissa, the smallest, tucked herself completely under the human's chin. Her soft new scales brushed his neck. Her small claws gripped the front of his shirt lightly. She buried her face in the warm space near his collarbone. Every few breaths, she let out a soft purr that vibrated against his skin. She slept the deepest of all, her tiny body rising and falling in perfect rhythm with the human's steady heartbeat. Lieutenant Elias Crow lay flat on his back. One arm rested along Syra's side in a loose hold. The other arm curled gently around Lyrith and Nissa at the same time. His head tilted slightly to the side to give Nissa more room. His face looked tired. Lines of worry still marked his brow, even in sleep. But his body stayed relaxed. He held the three princesses like they were fragile things he did not want to break. His chest rose and fell slow and even. The sound of his heart thumped steady under the weight of the girls. Small, glowing bugs lay scattered on the blankets. Their wings had stopped moving. Their light had dimmed to faint pulses. Empty ration wrappers from Elias's pack sat nearby. A few pieces of soft fruit, the kind the princesses liked, lay half-eaten on a crate lid. Someone had shared food. Someone had told stories. Someone had made this cold, forgotten place feel safe enough for sleep. The search team stood frozen at the tunnel entrance. Two guards raised their plasma spears without thinking. Then they lowered them again. Queen Virathra stepped forward, one careful step at a time. Her eyes grew wide. Her claws opened, then closed again. Her tail stopped moving completely. She stared at the scene in front of her. The rage that had burned in her for days turned cold, then warm, then something else entirely. She felt her throat tighten in a way it had not since her daughters were born. One guard whispered, "They are alive, Your Majesty." The queen did not answer. She took another step closer, sound on the dusty floor. She stopped a few paces away. She watched the rise and fall of four chests now breathing together. She saw how Elias' arms stayed around her daughters even in sleep. She saw how they pressed close to him like he was their shield. She saw no chains, no ropes, no fear on their faces. Syra stirred first. She felt the change in the air. Her eyes opened slow. She blinked twice. Then she saw her mother standing there. Syra tensed. Her arm tightened around Elias for a moment. Then she relaxed again. She did not move away. She looked at Virathra and said in a quiet voice, "Mother, we are safe. Do not wake them." Lyrith woke next. She lifted her head and looked around. Her clever eyes took in the guards, the queen, the tunnel. She saw Elias still asleep. She saw her sisters close. She whispered, they were scared of the loud noises upstairs, the bombs in their dreams. Elias made the bad dreams go away. He told stories about soft animals on his world. He let us hide when guards walked past. Nissa made a small sleepy sound. She rubbed her snout against Elias' neck, then opened her eyes. She saw the queen and smiled big. She said, "Mama, Elias has the best heartbeat. It goes thump, thump, thump like a lullaby." She yawned wide, showing tiny sharp teeth. Then she snuggled closer again. The queen felt something break inside her chest. It was not anger. It was the wall she built around her heart long ago. She knelt slowly on the dusty floor. Her armor creaked. Her tail curled around her feet. She reached out one clawed hand. She touched Syra gently on the shoulder, then Lyrith, then Nissa. The princesses leaned into her touch. They purred louder. Virathra looked at Elias. His eyes stayed closed. His breathing stayed even. She spoke soft, so only the girls could hear. Why him? Why this human? Syra answered first. Because he did not treat us like princesses. He treated us like children. He gave us food. He listened. He did not yell when we followed the bug too far. Cold pipe, so we would not shiver. Nissa said simply. He is warm and quiet and nice. The queen stayed kneeling for a long time. She watched her daughters sleep again. They settled back against Elias. They closed their eyes. They breathed together. Guards stood silent behind her. They did not know what to do. One young guard, Kor, wiped his eyes quick when nobody looked. Virathra finally stood. She turned to her team. She spoke in a low, firm voice. No one speaks of this yet. Bring soft carriers for my daughters. Wake the human gently. Tell no one outside this room what we found. The guards nodded. They moved careful. One guard knelt beside the cot. He touched Elias's shoulder light. Elias opened his eyes slow. He saw the queen first. Then he saw the girls still on him. He did not jump or shout. He whispered, Are they okay? The queen answered, Yes, they are okay, because of you. Elias looked down at the princesses. He smiled small and tired. Good, I was worried. The queen said nothing more. Guards lifted the girls one by one. They placed them in padded carriers. The princesses grumbled, but did not fight. They kept looking back at Elias. Syra said, Do not take him away, he is our friend. Lyrith said, He needs rest too. Nissa reached out one small claw. Elias took it gentle. He said, I will be fine, go with your mother now. The girls nodded sleepy. They let the carriers carry them away. The queen stayed behind with Elias and two guards. She looked at him long. She said, You could have run. You could have used them as hostages. You could have hurt them. Elias shook his head. I would never hurt children. Not yours, not anyone's. The queen tilted her head. Why? Humans fight us, they burn our worlds. Elias said, Not all humans, not me. I came here to help make peace. I stayed because your daughters needed someone to chase bugs with. Virathra said nothing for a moment. Then she spoke again. You will come with us back to the upper levels. You will stay close, until I decide what to do with you. Nodded. I understand. They walked back through the tunnel. The queen walked beside him. No chains this time. Guards followed quiet. The air felt different now. Less heavy, less cold. Elias' steps were slow. He felt tired, but calm. He thought about the princesses sleeping safe. He thought about the queen's face when she first saw them. He thought maybe, just maybe, something good could come from all this fear. They reached the upper halls. Lights burned brighter here. Servants waited with worried faces. The queen raised one hand. Everyone stay silent. My daughters are found. They are well. No one speaks until I say. Guards took Elias to a better room. Not a cell. A guest chamber, with a bed and a window. He sat on the edge and closed his eyes. The queen stood at the door. She watched him for a moment. Then she turned and walked to her daughter's chambers. Inside, the princesses already slept again. This time, in their own soft beds. But each one held a small piece of Elias' shirt. When no one looked, they clutched the cloth like a promise. The queen sat between their beds. She watched them breathe. She thought about the human downstairs. She thought about trust. She thought about change. Outside the palace, the hunter swarms returned to their caves. The warships in orbit stood down. The palace lights dimmed slow. The night grew quiet. But inside the queen's heart, something new began to grow. It was small and strange. It felt like hope. Queen Virathra walked out of her daughter's chambers with slow, heavy steps. Her mind felt full of new thoughts that did not fit with the old ways. She had always ruled with fear and strength, Claws and plasma blades made her people obey. Now, something different pulled at her heart. She thought about the human downstairs, the one who held her daughters safe while the whole palace searched in panic. She felt anger rise again, but it mixed with something warm and strange. She pushed the feeling down and kept walking. She went straight to the guest chamber where Elias rested. 2 guards stood outside the door. They bowed low when she approached. She waved them aside and entered alone. Elias sat on the edge of the bed. He looked up when the door opened. His face showed no fear, only quiet waiting. The queen closed the door behind her. She stood tall with her arms crossed. Her tail moved once, then stopped. She said, "You will come with me now. We will speak in the truth chamber." Argument. He followed her through the halls. They passed servants who stared wide-eyed. They passed nobles who whispered behind their hands. Nobody dared speak loud. The queen led him to a small round room deep in the palace center. The walls glowed soft blue from truth crystals embedded in the stone. A single chair sat in the middle, with straps for arms and legs. Elias sat down without being told. The queen stood in front of him. She pressed a panel. The crystals brightened. They sent gentle waves through his body to read his heart and mind. She asked her first question. "Did you take my daughters by force?" Elias answered clear and calm. "No, I did not." The crystals stayed blue. No lie. The queen asked, "Did you plan to use them against me?" "No." The crystals stayed blue. "Did you harm them in any way?" "No." The queen leaned closer. "Did you touch them without their wish?" Elias shook his head. "They climbed on me when they felt cold and scared. I held them so they would not fall. I kept them warm." Crystals glowed steady blue. She asked more questions for a long time. She asked about his past, his orders from the human fleet, his thoughts on the war. Elias answered every question the same way, honest and simple. He said he came to the palace to build peace. He said he hated the war because it killed children on both sides. He said he saw the princesses as little girls, not enemies. The queen listened without speaking. Her claws tapped once against her arm. Then she turned off the crystals. The room grew dim again. She said, "Stand." Elias stood. The queen looked at him for a long moment. She said, "Follow me." They walked back to the throne room. This time many nobles and commanders waited inside. They stood in rows, silent and tense. The queen took her high seat. She looked out over them all. She spoke loud so every ear could hear. "My daughters are found. They live. They sleep safe in their beds now." A low murmur ran through the room. The queen raised one hand for silence. She continued, "Taken. They were not hurt. They chose to hide with this human." She pointed to Elias. He stood beside her chair with his head up. The nobles stared. Some showed teeth. Some hissed low. The queen continued, "He did not force them. He did not trick them. He shared food. He told stories. He gave them a place to feel safe when the palace felt too big and too loud." She paused, then said, "He protected them when I could not." The room went completely quiet. The queen looked at her commanders. She said, "Bring the memory orbs." The servants carried in 3 glowing spheres. They floated above the floor. The queen touched one. The air above it shimmered. A picture formed. It showed the hidden alcove. Elias asleep with the 3 princesses curled on his chest. Another orb showed the girls chasing the glowing bug. Another showed Elias, giving them pieces of fruit, and speaking soft words. The nobles watched in silence. Some faces changed from anger to confusion. Some eyes grew wet. When the pictures faded, the queen spoke again. "This human did what many of us failed to do. He saw fear in my daughter's eyes, and he answered with kindness. He did not run. He did not fight. He stayed and he cared." The queen stood. She walked down the steps to stand in front of Elias. She looked down at him. She said, "Lieutenant Elias Crow, you are no longer a hostage. You are chosen kin. You carry my blood oath now. You will protect my line as you already have." Elias blinked, surprised. He said, "I will do my best, Your Majesty." The queen turned to her people. She said, From this day, the armistice with the humans grows stronger. It becomes true alliance. No more raids, no more threats. We will share knowledge. We will share strength. The nobles bowed low. Some still looked unsure, but none dared argue. Later that night, the queen went to her daughter's chambers. They were awake now. They sat on the big bed together, talking quiet. Sira looked up first. Mother Lirith smiled small. Nissa jumped off the bed and ran to hug the queen's leg. Knelt. She gathered all three close. She said, "I was afraid. I thought I lost you forever." Sisira said, "We were afraid too, but Elias made it better." The queen nodded, "I know." She told them what she decided. The princesses listened with wide eyes. Nissa said, "Does that mean Elias stays with us always?" The queen said, "Yes, he stays." Lirith said, "Good, he tells the best stories about animals with no scales." Sisira said, "And he doesn't mind when we climb on him." The queen felt a small smile touch her lips. She said, "Then go to him. Tell him yourself." The princesses ran out of the room. They found Elias in his new chamber. He sat by the window looking at the stars. They burst in and climbed onto the bed around him. Nissa said, "You are our kin now." Elias laughed soft. "I guess I am." Sisira said, "Mother said you carry her blood oath. That means you belong to us." Lirith said, "And we belong to you a little too." Elias looked at each of them. He said, "I will keep you safe. I promise." Servants spoke to Elias with less hate. Guards nodded when he passed. The queen met with human leaders over secure links. They talked about trade, about shared patrols, about ending old grudges. Elias helped translate sometimes. He spoke simple words that made both sides listen. The princesses followed him everywhere. They slept in their beds now, but sometimes at night they sneaked to his room. They piled on his chest again. They said it helped bad dreams go away. Elias never pushed them off. He just held them gentle until they slept. One evening, the queen found them like that. She stood in the doorway and watched. Elias lay on his back with three princesses asleep on top of him. She felt no anger this time. She felt something close to thanks. She walked closer, quiet. Elias opened his eyes. He saw her and started to sit up. The queen shook her head. "Stay." She sat on the edge of the bed. She looked at her daughter's sleeping faces. She said, "They trust you more than they trust guards, more than they trust me." Sometimes, Elias said, "They trust you most. They just needed someone to hold them when things felt scary." The queen reached out. She touched Nissa's small head gentle. She said, "I was wrong about humans. I thought you were all monsters." Elias said, "Some are, some of us are not." The queen nodded. "I see that now." She stood. She said, "Rest, they need you strong." Elias said, "Good night, your majesty." The queen left the room. She closed the door soft. Behind her the four hearts beat together in the quiet dark. Word of the change spread fast across the stars. Kasari ships no longer pointed weapons at human stations. Human ships no longer scanned for Kasari traps. Traders met in neutral space. They exchanged goods and stories. The princesses grew taller and stronger. They trained with spears and studied old maps, but they kept their human softness. They laughed more. They asked questions. They showed kindness when they could. The queen watched it all. She felt pride in her daughters. She felt something new in herself, respect for the species she once hated. She thought about Elias often, the quiet human who never raised a weapon, but changed everything with simple care. She knew the galaxy would never be the same, not because of battles won, not because of fear, but because one man refused to see children as enemies, and because a fierce queen learned to see kindness as strength. Months passed after the queen made her blood oath. The palace on Kael'thar V felt different now. Servants moved with lighter steps. Guards smiled more often, even at the human who walked their halls. Lieutenant Elias Crow became a quiet part of daily life. He woke early. He helped fix broken machines in the lower levels. He taught the princesses simple games from Earth, like tag and hide and seek. The girls loved the games. They ran through empty corridors, laughing loud enough to echo off black stone walls. Queen Virathra watched from high windows. She saw Syra chase Elias across a training yard. The princess pretended to hunt him with mock claws. Elias pretended to run slow so she could catch him. When she pounced, he fell dramatic on the grass and let her pin him. The queen felt a strange warmth in her chest. She had never seen her oldest daughter play like that before. Lirith joined next. She hid behind pillars and jumped out to surprise them. Nissa rode on Elias's shoulders like a small rider on a tall mount. They all laughed together. The sound reached the queen's ears and made her tail curl gentle. One morning, the queen called Elias to the throne room alone. No guards, no nobles, just the two of them. She sat on her high seat and looked down at him. She said, "The alliance grows strong. Human ships bring medicine and tools to our outposts. Our ships carry rare metals to your stations. Traders meet without fear. Children from both sides play together on neutral moons." Elias bowed his head a little. "I am glad, Your Majesty," the queen continued. "But my daughters still seek you at night. They say your chest makes the best nest." Elias smiled small. "They are welcome any time." The queen stood. She walked down the steps until she stood close to him. She said, "Then come tonight. Bring stories. They miss them." That evening Elias went to the princess's chambers. The room was wide with soft beds piled high with silk and furs. The girls waited on the biggest bed. They wore night robes of deep red. Syrah sat tall in the middle. Lirith leaned against pillows. Nissa bounced excited. Elias sat on the edge. They climbed over him quick. Syrah draped across his chest. Lirith curled at his side. Nissa tucked under his chin just like before. They settled fast. Their breathing slowed. Elias began to speak soft. He told them about oceans on Earth, big and blue with waves that crashed on sandy shores. He told them about whales, huge creatures that sang songs across miles. He told them about forests, thick with green leaves where deer walked quiet. The princesses listened with wide eyes. They asked questions. Syrah wanted to know if humans rode whales. Lirith asked how trees grew without fire. Nissa just purred, happy. The queen stood silent in the doorway. She watched the four of them. She saw how her daughters relaxed completely. She saw how Elias's hand rested light on their backs. She felt no jealousy, only thanks. She stepped inside, quiet. The girls looked up, but did not move. The queen sat on a low stool near the bed. She said, "Continue." Elias looked at her surprised. Then he went on. He told about snow-cold white flakes that covered mountains. He told about fireflies, tiny lights that danced in summer nights. The princesses sighed, content. The queen listened too. She had never heard such simple tales. They felt new and clean. When the story ended, the girls slept deep. Elias stayed still, so he would not wake them. The queen spoke low. "Tell me, Elias, do humans always show kindness to strangers?" He thought for a moment. "Not always, but many do. We learn it young. We protect the small and the weak because we know what it feels like to be afraid." The queen nodded slow. "I thought kindness made you weak. I was wrong. It made you strong enough to earn my trust." Elias said, "Thank you, Your Majesty." The queen stood. She touched each daughter's head gentle. Then she touched Elias' shoulder light. She said, "Sleep well, chosen kin." She left the room quiet. Word of the fierce alien queen's new bond spread across the galaxy. Carried stories from port to port. Traders told it in bars. Diplomats shared it in meetings. Humans learned that the Kasari were not only warriors, they had mothers who worried. They had children who needed safety. Kasari learned that humans were not just destroyers. They could build, they could care, they could love. The alliance grew roots deep and strong. Years turned. The princesses grew tall. Syra became a commander of her own fleet. She led with fierce honor, but always with mercy. Lirith became a scholar. She studied old human books and Kasari scrolls. She found ways to mix both knowledge. Nissa stayed small in heart, even as she grew. She visited human colonies. She played with their young. She brought glowing bugs as gifts. Everywhere she went, people remembered the story of the human chest that became a safe nest. Elias grew older too. His hair turned gray at the sides. His steps slowed. But the princesses never stopped coming to him. They visited often. Sometimes, tiny Ksari, with soft scales and curious eyes. They climbed on Elias' lap. They listened to stories. They fell asleep against his chest, just like their mothers once did. Elias held them gentle. He told tales of stars and seas and brave hearts. One quiet evening, long after the first vanishing, Queen Varathra sat with Elias on a balcony. The stars shone bright above them. The planet below slept peaceful. She said, "Do you remember the night I almost killed you?" Elias nodded. "I remember." The queen looked at the sky. "I was blind with fear. You saw clearly. You saw children. You saw need." Elias said, "Anyone would have done the same." The queen shook her head. "No, not anyone. Only you. Only a human with a steady heart." She reached out. She placed her clawed hand over his human one. She said, "My daughters vanished that night, but they found something better. They found trust. They found family. They found you." Elias looked at her. He said, "And I found them. I found a home." The queen smiled small, a rare thing for her. She said, "Then stay always. This is your home now." Elias squeezed her hand gentle. "I will." Below them the palace lights glowed warm. Around them the galaxy turned slow. Peace held strong, not from weapons, not from fear, but from one simple act. A human opened his arms. A queen learned to trust. 3 princesses found a safe place to rest. And the stars whispered quiet that humanity still carried its greatest power. Kindness wrapped in stubborn courage. The fierce alien queen's daughters never vanished again. They stayed close. They grew strong. They carried human softness under Kasari scales. They slept sometimes on a chest that beat steady and true. They remembered the man who refused to fear them. They remembered the mother who learned to bend. They remembered the night everything changed, and every heartbeat reminded them why the universe still turned with hope.